Think you can prep all furniture the same way? I once used the wrong method and the dresser swelled up like cardboard. Here's the thing. Even if you use the right products, if you don't treat the material correctly, your paint job can still fail. Most thrifted or secondhand furniture is not solid wood. It's often a mix of wood, laminate, and particle board, and sometimes all on one piece. Even if it looks all like real wood, they are hiding it. It is not all real wood anymore. And each one of these materials reacts totally different when you paint it. Wood, it bleeds through with these weird stains if you don't prime. Laminate, it will fight your paint unless you scuff it up and give it something to grab onto. It's kind of like a new phone without a case. When you don't have a case on, your phone can just fall out of your hand. It is so slick. But when you put a case on that phone, you are able to hold on to it really well. The same thing happens with laminate and paint. And then particle board, it swells and bubbles if you even think about putting water-based products straight onto it. So once you know how to spot what you're working with, the panic goes away. You can keep it simple and still get a professional looking finish. One of my biggest mistakes, I found this beautiful dresser. It was Stanley made. I thought it was solid wood back when I didn't know any better. I cleaned it, I sanded it, and then I just went straight on with my chalk paint. I did not even prime it back then. Right after the brush hit that one corner where there was just straight up particle board, it started bubbling. It was like wet cardboard. That's what particle board does when water-based products hit it raw. It swells, it gets soft, and the texture never goes back to smooth. I let it dry, I sanded it as smooth as I could get it, but the particle board just flakes apart once it's bubbled and you try to sand it. It's kind of like trying to sand wet cereal. I could never get that section to look right again, and it made the whole dresser feel cheap, even though the rest looked fine. Bleed-through stains were another hard lesson. I cannot count the number of times that I have thought, maybe I can just skip the primer on this one, only to watch the yellow and pink and brown splotches come through every single coat of paint. At first, I thought it was just my paint or my technique. I didn't really understand where these little stains were coming from, but no, it is the wood or the furniture itself. The oils, the tannins, even old stain on furniture can just leach right through unless you seal them. And they will not go away unless you prime. And don't get me started on laminate. I learned early that if you don't prep, the paint will scratch right off. You touch your fingernail to it and the finish is gone. I remember the first time I painted some IKEA furniture. It was one of those cubed bookshelves. And yeah, I took some extra time prepping it. I sanded it and I cleaned it really, really well. But I did not prime it, and I can't believe that I did that. I still get a little bit annoyed with myself for not doing that. I should have known better. That surface was so slick. I painted it, and sure enough, that paint just scratched right off. Back then, distressing was so in, and so I did distress this, and man, the paint peeled. Usually when I paint furniture and I distress, the paint doesn't just peel off like this, but it peeled off. It was a disaster. Thankfully, I learned pretty fast after that incident. You can't really slap most paint onto laminate furniture. I've seen enough pieces peel and scratch to just know that it is not worth skipping prep. That is why primer is so important. I cannot stress this enough. Primer is so important. And it's why on this project, I actually used 2 different primers. This MCM dresser is made of laminate, particle board, and real wood. If I had just thrown some paint onto it without thinking too much, the laminate would have peeled, the particle board would have bubbled up, and the raw wood would have bled through. Even though I'm using a darker paint color, you still could have seen the wood tannins bleed through the paint. Trust me on this. I have seen wood bleed through on black paint. Now, it's not as noticeable as other paints like white or light color paints, but I could still see bleed through black paint. Normally, I tell beginners they can keep it just super simple and use tinted shellac primer like Bin. It does everything. It seals particle board, it blocks stains, and it helps the paint to stick to slick laminate. But Bin primer is white, and I'm using a dark paint color here. White primer under dark paint is not my favorite. Heaven forbid, if and when the paint chips, you will see a big white bright spot. The contrast between the dark paint and the white primer is just way too much. And yes, while we want to use the most durable paint that we can and do the correct process, your paint will inevitably just chip or scratch, especially if you have kids or pets, or if you're not super soft with your furniture. I mean, think about paint on cars. It is very, very durable paint, but heaven forbid when somebody door dings you, the paint chips or scratches. Same thing is true with painting furniture. A lot of these paints are very good for your furniture and are very durable, but if they get hit hard enough, it is going to chip or scratch. And if you have dark paint with white primer underneath, you are going to see that white primer show up, and it does not look good. The other thing about white primer under dark paints is it can actually take more coats to fully cover. And sometimes it even makes that final paint color look a little bit lighter. So I didn't really want to use a white primer underneath this dark paint. For this project, I sealed everything with clear shellac first. That sealed in the particle board and gave me adhesion everywhere. The laminate, the wood, the particle board, it was all sealed in. Then I went in with this black Aqualock primer to even out the surface. And here's why it matters. When you sand down a piece, you end up with splotchiness all over. Patches of raw wood, patches where the finish is still there, and some places in between. And if you skip that tinted primer, you will see all of that through the paint. The raw wood soaks up the paint and makes it kind of look flat. And then the finished spots stay a little bit shiny. So your sheen will look flat and shiny and satin and flat all over. Kind of like polka dots all over. It is not good. And your sheen will look blotchy no matter how nice your paint is. If it has some primer in it, it still will look splotchy. Trust me on this one. This black primer hides all of that and gives me a consistent surface so the dark paint looks rich and even everywhere. It is such good primer. If you've ever had paint bubble or stain, it is not just you. And it's not just your paint. Most of the time, it's because of what your furniture is actually made of and how it reacts to the products you're using. That's why I put together this free surface prep cheat sheet. It breaks down exactly how to treat wood, laminate, and particle board so you can avoid bubbling paint, scratches, and stains, even on your first project. And if you want to go a step further, my course, How to Paint Furniture Like a Boss, not only shows you how to prep, how to paint, but also walks you through real life examples of what each material looks and feels like. So even if you have never painted before, you'll know exactly what you're working with and how to handle it. So now this dresser is actually ready for paint. It's prepped the right way. There's no bubbling, no peeling, and no bleed through. If you want to see how I turned this $50 dresser into something that looks like it came straight out of West Elm with a smooth, professional finish, you've got to see the next video. I'll show you the $50 tool that made the process way faster and easier, even for a beginner. Tap here to watch that next one. See you in the next video.